Hello friends, I hope you have been enjoying the Azure Administrator Exam practice question series till now. Welcome to another part of this most popular Q&A series on my channel Tech with Jaspal. For those of you who are new to this channel folks, we go through questions which mimic the style of content that you will encounter in your exam, and then we understand the tips and tricks behind choosing the correct answers and also what led to eliminating the incorrect choice. So stay with me till the end of this video to get the maximum out of our content. Now in this video, we are going to look at 20 more questions covering some of the very important topics of the Azure Administrator exam. So let's start with question number 71 of the series.
You administer a solution in Azure that is currently having performance issues. You need to find the cause of the performance issues pertaining to metrics on the Azure infrastructure. Which of the following is the tool you should use to analyze the performance issues? So your infrastructure is having issues. The infrastructure is hosted on Azure, and you need to find which tool you can use to analyze these performance issues. Your options are Azure Monitor, Azure Activity Log, Azure Traffic Analytics, Azure Advisor. Azure Monitor is the tool you should use to diagnose performance issues related to metrics on the Azure infrastructure. It helps you gain insights into the performance and availability of your application and resources by collecting data from various sources, including metrics, logs, and activity data. Let's now look at why others are not right. Azure Activity Log provides information around operations performed on resources in your subscription. Azure Traffic Analytics is more focused on analyzing network traffic patterns. And Azure Advisor, as the name suggests, provides best practice recommendations for improving the performance, security, and reliability of your Azure resources. Next question. You have an Azure subscription named Subscription 1 that contains a resource group named RG1. In RG1, you create an internal load balancer named LB1 and a public load balancer named LB2. You need to ensure that an administrator named Admin1 can manage both the load balancers LB1 and LB2. The solution must follow the principle of least privilege. Which role should you assign to admin1 for each task? Now the tasks are, you need to add a backend pool to LB1, and the second task is you need to add a health probe to LB2. So in both the tasks, you are performing either a different operation on both the load balancers. Now the options that have been given to you are contributor on LB1, network contributor on LB1, network contributor on RG1, and owner of LB1. Similarly, you have corresponding issues for LB2, where LB1 has been replaced by LB2. And you just have one resource group, so the option related to resource group remains same. So before we go to look at these options in detail, you need to understand that in Azure, you can specify a scope at 4 levels, which are management groups, subscriptions, resource groups, and resources. This pretty much follows the hierarchy in Azure. I already have a detailed video around how to differentiate between different things and what is the hierarchy in Azure. So if you don't know these terms yet, then go through the video to understand the hierarchy in more detail. Now the question here specifically talks about principle of least privilege. So we can rule out anything at resource group level, as this will be too broad permission. So we will strike out option 3 in both of the cases. Now the remaining options are focused on individual resources. So let's look at which role is least privileged and allows you to do the necessary task. The standard owner and contributor role are not specific to any resource type. However, the question specifically talks about load balancers, so both of them are again an incorrect choice. Now the remaining option, which leaves us with just one option, which is network contributor on LB1 and LB2, is the correct choice here. The network contributor role lets you manage networks but not access them. Question number 73 of the series. You have an Azure DNS zone named DevOpsHub.com. You need to delegate a subdomain named cicd.devopshub.com to a different DNS server in Azure. What should you do? Your options are create a PTR record named CICD in DevOpsHub.com zone, create a NS record named CICD in the DevOpsHub.com zone, create a record named star.cicd in the DevOpsHub.com zone, modify the SOA record of DevOpsHub.com. To delegate a subdomain named cicd.devopshub.com to a different DNS server in Azure, you should create a NS record named CICD in the devopshub.com zone. The NS record or name server record specifies the authoritative DNS server responsible for resolving the subdomain cicd.devopshub.com. By creating this NS record, you are delegating the resolution of the subdomain to a different DNS server. Next question. You have an Azure subscription named Sub1 that contains the Azure resources shown in the table. Now the table has 3 Azure resources with the name RG1, Storage1, and VNet1. And on the right side, you have the type of the resources. As the name indicates, RG1 is a resource group, Storage1 is a storage account, VNet1 is the virtual network. You assign an Azure policy that has the following settings. Now you are assigning an Azure policy on these set of resources. And the settings are the scope of the policy is Sub1, which is subscription 1. And there is exclusion as well. So the exclusion is applied on a resource level, and you can see VNet1 is excluded from the policy. Policy definition is append a tag and its value to resources. Policy enforcement is enabled, which tells the policy is enabled. Now, as you can see in the policy description, it's basically appending a tag and its value to resources. So the tag name is tag4 and the tag value is value 4. You assign tags to the resources as shown in the table. You have different resources and tags in the table. Sub1 has a tag tag1 : subscription. RG1 has a tag called tag2 : IT. Storage1 has a tag called tag3 : value A. VNet1 has a tag called tag3 : value 2. Now, for each of the following statements, you need to select yes if the statement is true, otherwise select no. Your first statement is RG1 has the tag2 : IT tag assigned only. Now, based on the policy definition, to append a tag and its value to resources, this statement will be true, as here we are talking about tags on a resource group. So there will be no change to the tags assigned to RG1. The second statement is Storage1 has the tags tag1, its value is subscription, tag2, its value is IT, tag3's value is value 1, and tag4 value is value 4 tags assigned. Storage1 is a resource which was created before policy was applied, and the policy doesn't have any remediation plan associated. So the tag should remain same. Hence the statement is incorrect, because initially Storage1 has just one tag, which is tag3, and its value is value 1. The third statement, VNet1 has tag2 with value IT and tag3 with value 2 tags assigned. Resources don't inherit the tags you apply to a resource group or a subscription. So this statement is again incorrect, as originally you can see VNet1 had just one tag, which was tag3 with the value 2. But here in the statement, they have a different tag coming, and that was not a tag which was defined in the policy. Rather, it was a tag which was at a resource group level. And as my last statement, the tags are not inherited. So VNet1 will still have just one tag, which is tag3 with the value 2. Next question. You have a hybrid deployment of Azure Active Directory that contains the users shown in the following table. Now you have 3 users, of which user 1 and user 2 are member type and user 3 is guest type. And then user 2 has on-premise sync enabled, whereas user 1 and 3 do not have. What this tells us is user 2 is a user which was created in on-prem Active Directory and has been synced to Azure Active Directory. This is a critical thing in this question here. You need to modify the job title and usage location attributes for the users. For which user can you modify the attributes from Azure AD? Now, for the first part of this question, the attribute that you are modifying is job title. And in the answers, obviously, you have a combination of different users. So as I was putting emphasis on on-prem sync enabled attribute as true for user 2, this was because you must use Windows Server Active Directory to update the identity, contact info, or job info for users whose source of authority is Windows Server Active Directory. And in this case, user 2 has an on-premise sync enabled, so you can't update its job title from Azure AD. That means the correct answer here is user 1 and user 3 only. Now, in the next part, you are modifying the usage location. Usage location is something which is set only on the cloud side for all users. So you should be able to update it for all users from Azure AD, irrespective of on-premise sync setup, which is why the correct answer here is user 1, 2, and 3, all of them. Let's look at next question. You have an Azure storage account named storage1. You have an Azure app service named app1 and an app named app2 that runs in an Azure container instance. Each app uses a managed identity. You need to ensure that app1 and app2 can read blobs from storage1. The solution must meet the following requirements. And your requirements are: minimize the number of secrets used, ensure that app2 can only read from storage1 for the next 30 days. What should you configure in storage1 for each app? And the first part of the question is talking about app1. And the options are advanced security, access control or IAM, access keys, shared access signatures, also called as SAS. As you would have read in the question, both the apps use managed identity. So the app 1 can use the storage account via IAM. As per the requirement, we need to minimize the number of secrets used. So access key is not an ideal option here. You always need to focus on the requirements as well, because due to different requirements, the option that you choose as a solution will change in most of the cases. Here, you could have easily chosen access keys as well, because obviously that's a better method of access, but the question has a requirement to minimize the number of secrets used. That's why we have chosen IAM as our option. Now for app 2, you have a specific requirement here in the question that app 2 needs the ability to only read data from storage1 for the next 30 days. So we are talking about temporary credentials, and for that we will create a shared access signature token, which is SAS, with a validity of 30 days that will allow read access to the necessary containers or blobs. Now, when creating a SAS token, you can scope it to specific containers, blobs, and operations, which helps you control the level of access app2 has during the 30-day period. So I hope, friends, you have understood why I have chosen access control for app1 and why I have chosen SAS for app2. If you have any doubts in the questions and answers that I am choosing throughout the series, and you think there are some issues which have led me to choosing wrong options, then post them in the comment section and we will be happy to resolve your queries. And in case we have chosen a wrong option, we will make amendments. Let's look at question number 77. You need to create an Azure storage account that meets the following requirements. Now, the requirements are minimize costs, support hot, cool, and archive blob tiers, provide fault tolerance if a disaster affects the Azure region where the account resides, select the appropriate options to complete the command you should use. Your command is AZ storage account create, then RG1 is the name of the resource group, storage account 1 is the name of the storage account. Now you need to choose which kind of storage you will create and which is the SKU you will use. Out of the option provided in the question, it's only storage V2 kind that supports hot, cool, and archive blob tiers, making it the correct choice here. Now, the other requirement here is fault tolerance if a disaster affects the Azure region where the account resides. So the right SKU that needs to be chosen here will be standard_GRS. So again, as I was telling you in the previous question, it is the requirements, the small keywords in the requirement that can change your correct answer. So please pay attention to the requirements. Question number 78 of the series. You plan to use the Azure import-export service to copy files to a storage account. Which two files should you create before you prepare the drives for the import job? Your options are a dataset CSV file, an XML manifest file, a JSON configuration file, a drive set CSV file, a PowerShell PS1 file. And the correct answers here are option A and option D, a dataset CSV file and a drive set CSV file. You can refer to the link on your screen to understand the detailed steps to be followed when preparing drives for the import jobs, as there are many more things that you need to do apart from just creating these two files. Question number 79. You create an Azure storage account. You plan to add 15 blob containers to the storage account. For one of the containers, you need to use a different key to encrypt data at rest. What should you do before you create the container? So basically, you have an Azure storage account and you plan to add 15 blob containers to that account, but you need to use a different key to encrypt data at rest for one of the containers. That is the requirement of the question. Now your options are modify the minimum TLS version, rotate the access keys, create an encryption scope, generate a shared access signature. Before you create the container and use a different key to encrypt data at rest, you should create an encryption scope, which is option C here. An encryption scope is a feature that allows you to use different keys to encrypt data for specific containers within an Azure storage account. By creating an encryption scope, you can associate it with the container that needs to use a different key for encryption, which is one of the requirements of this question. Question number 80. You have an Azure subscription. You plan to deploy a new storage account. You need to configure encryption for the account, and the solution must meet the following requirements. Use the maximum supported bit length. Use a customer managed key stored in a key vault. Which type of key and which bit length should you use? Now in the keys you have AES, RSA, and 3DES, and the bit length here is 2048, 3072, 4096, and 8192. Azure Storage Encryption supports RSA and RSA HSM keys of sizes 2048, 3072, and 4096. Based on that, the correct options here are key would be RSA and bit length would be 4096. That is the maximum bit length which is supported. So automatically 8192 is not the right options. And since the question says, since one of the requirements in the question is use the maximum supported bit length, that is the reason we have chosen 4096 and not 2048 or 3072. And the key needs to be an RSA key.
If you are enjoying the content, friends, then don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and make sure to hit that bell notification icon to get notified on when next part of the series are released. Friends, unlock exclusive access to the complete series of questions in a convenient PDF format by joining our Gold membership. Do not miss out. Join now and email us at devopshub2023@gmail.com requesting your PDF copy. Let's now get back to the next question of the series.
You have an Azure load balancer named LB1. You assign a user named user1 the roles shown in the following exhibit. Now there is an exhibit screenshot on your screen where you can see the roles that are assigned. Now looking at this exhibit, you can see user1 has two roles assigned for LB1, which is user access administrator and virtual machine contributor. User access administrator is directly applied for this resource. As you can see, the scope is this resource, whereas virtual machine contributor is inherited from resource group level. Keeping this in mind, let's look at next part of this question. Select the answer choice that completes each statement based on the information presented in the graphic section on previous slide. User1 can dash LB1. So the first role was user administrator. And based on the role name, you can say correct answer for this case would be assign access to other users for LB1. Next statement is user1 can dash the resource group. The second role was virtual machine contributor, and based on it, the correct answer would be delete a virtual machine from resource group. The other options, modify the load balancing rules or deploy an Azure Kubernetes service cluster to the resource group, are not relevant options here. Let's look at next question. You recently created a new Azure subscription that contains a user named admin1. Admin1 attempts to deploy an Azure Marketplace resource by using an Azure Resource Manager template. Admin1 deploys the template by using Azure PowerShell and receives the following error. And the error is user failed validation to purchase resources. Error message says legal terms have not been accepted for this item on this subscription. To accept legal terms, please go to the Azure portal. Then you have a link with more details. And configure programmatic deployment for the marketplace item or create it there for the first time. You need to ensure that admin1 can deploy the marketplace resource successfully. What should you do? So basically, someone is trying to deploy a marketplace resource and they are getting an error message where they can see legal terms have not been accepted for this item on this subscription. So what should you do so that you could do the deployment successfully? Your options are from Azure portal, from Azure PowerShell, run the set-AZ API management subscription commandlet. From Azure PowerShell, run the set-AZ marketplace terms commandlet. From the Azure portal, register the machine.marketplace resource provider. From the Azure portal, assign the billing administrator role to admin1. To resolve the error message and enable admin1 to deploy the Azure Marketplace resource successfully, you need to accept the legal terms for the marketplace resource in the Azure portal. To do this programmatically, you can use the set-AZ marketplace terms commandlet in Azure portal to accept the legal terms for the subscription. The commandlet takes the name of the publisher, the name of the offer, and the terms agreement types as parameters. Once the legal terms have been accepted, the user should be able to deploy the marketplace resource successfully. You only need to accept terms once per subscription for the resource, and be sure to use all lowercase letters in the parameter values. Question number 83 of the series. You have an Azure subscription that contains the resources shown in the following table. Now, the Resources are a resource group and a virtual network. Resource group name is RG3 and the virtual network name is VNet1. And then there are some tags defined. The resource group doesn't have any tag, but VNet1 has an existing tag called department D1. And obviously RG3 is not member of any resource group and VNet1 belongs to RG3 resource group. Now you need to assign a policy to RG3 as shown in the following table. Now in the table, again, there are details of the policy where the scope is defined as the scope is drilled down to only resource group level, and then there are no exclusions defined, and the policy is going to apply a tag and its default value. And the parameters for the tags are the tag name is level 1 and the value is value 1. Now the question is to RG3, you apply the tag rgroup colon RG3. You deploy a virtual network named VNet2 to RG3. Which tags apply to VNet1 and VNet2? To answer, you need to select the appropriate options below. Now, for VNet1, you have options as department D1 only, department D1 and R group RG3 only, department D1 and level value 1 only, department D1 R group RG3 and level value 1. Whenever you have questions related to assignment of a new policy, then remember by default, the assignment of newly created policy will only take effect on the newly created resources. That is, the resources that are going to be created after the policy has been applied. Existing resources will need to be updated using a remediation task after the policy is signed. Here in this case, there is no mention of a remediation task. So VNet1 will only have one existing tag, which is department D1 only. Now for VNet2 was created after the policy was applied. So it will get level value 1. And remember, resources don't inherit the tags you apply to a resource group or a subscription. So VNet2 will only have one tag, which is level value 1. So folks, I hope this has cleared you how the inheritance of tags happens in Azure and how the nesting can take place. If you have any doubts related to applications of tag, please post your questions in the comment section and we will try to answer them as soon as possible. Meanwhile, let's look at next question. You have an Azure subscription that contains the resources shown in the following table. Now you have 4 resources, of which 2 are resource group. One is with the name of RG1 and the other one is RG2. Then you have a storage 1, which is obviously a storage account hosted in RG1. And then you have a workspace 1, which is Azure Synapse Analytics Workspace and is hosted in resource group 2. You need to assign workspace 1 a role to allow read, write, and delete operations for the data stored in the containers of storage 1. Which role should you assign? Your options are reader and data access, storage account contributor, storage blob data contributor. To allow workspace 1 to perform read, write, and delete operations for the data stored in the containers of storage 1 in Azure, you should assign the storage blob data contributor role to workspace 1. The storage blob data contributor role provides the necessary permissions to perform these actions on Azure Blob storage containers and their data, making it the appropriate choice for your scenario. Question number 85 of the series. You have an Azure AD tenant that contains the groups shown in the following table. Now you have 4 groups listed there and then you have their types listed. So group 1 is security based. Group 2 is mail enabled security based, and group 3 and 4 are Microsoft 365 groups. And As the name indicates, for group 1, 2, and 3, the security is enabled, whereas for group 4, the security is disabled. You purchase Azure Active Directory Premium P2 licenses. To which groups can you assign a license? Your options are group 1 only, group 1 and group 3 only, group 3 and group 4 only, group 1, group 2, and group 3 only, group 1, 2, 3, and 4. Assigning Azure AD P2 license can only be used with security groups and Microsoft 365 groups that have security enabled. So in this case, even though group 1, 3, and 4 fall into the category of allowed group types, but group 4 doesn't have security enabled. So the correct answer is option B, group 1 and group 3 only. Next question. You have an Azure subscription that contains a storage account named Storage 1. You have the devices shown in the following table. Now, there are 3 devices with the name of device 1, 2, and 3. And the platform for them is Windows 10, Linux, and macOS. For which devices can you use AZ copy to copy data to Storage 1? Your options are device 1 only, device 1 and 2 only, device 1 and 3 only, device 1, 2, and 3. AZ copy is supported in all the 3 operating systems mentioned in this question. So the correct answer would be option D, device 1, 2, and 3. Question number 87 of the series. You have an Azure subscription. The subscription contains storage account named Storage 1 that has the lifecycle management rules shown in the following table. You have 3 rules listed, rule 1, rule 2, rule 3. And if base blobs were not modified for more than 5 days, then there are some rules defined. So for rule 1, the rule defined is move to cold storage. For rule 2, the option is delete the blob. And for rule 3, the option is move to archive storage. On July 1, you store a blob named file1 in the hot access tier of storage 1. What is the state of file1 on July 7? So when you move from July 1 to July 7, you have already exceeded more than 5 days. The difference between July 1 and July 7 is more than 5 days. So all the 3 rules will come into picture. So the options given to you are on July 7, it will be stored in the hot access tier, or it will be stored in the cool access tier, or it will be stored in the archive access tier, or the file will get deleted. This is definitely a trick question, as all the 3 rules have an action defined after 5 days of last modification. So all of them will apply to the blob at the same time in this case. Whenever you have such lifecycle management rules defined, then lifecycle management applies the least expensive option to the blob. So action to move to archive is cheaper than to move to cool, and delete is cheaper than move to archive. So the correct answer here is file1 will be deleted. In this case, because every rule is being applied at the same time, so by default lifecycle management chooses the cheapest option. That's why the file will be deleted. Next question. You plan to deploy an Azure container instance by using the following Azure Resource Manager template. Now you have a template on your screen. Before proceeding forward, let's try to understand the template, as the question is completely reliant on what you understand in this template. So type tells you that container resource is being deployed. Location, as I have highlighted now, specifies it is being deployed in the West US region. Then properties, element defines the properties which are specific to each container being created. Here we are deploying just one container whose name is webprod From the image property, you can tell a version of Microsoft IaaS server is being deployed whose communication will happen on TCP port 80. It further tells you that the memory and CPU specifications as well. There you can see the memory in GB is 1.5 and there is one CPU allocated. Then the container restart policy is defined as on failure. This is a critical thing to understand here. It means that the container will restart if IaaS communication on port 80 fails, because these are the ports defined here. Now, key thing to note here is IP address being defined as public, which means the container app will be publicly accessible. This is a hint to the questions that you are going to see next. Finally, then the OS type is defined as Windows, which tells us that container is hosted on Windows platform. This is not the anything related to the OS of the client. It is the OS of the container. Let's now look at next part of this question. Use the drop-down menus to select the answer choice that completes each statement based on the information presented in the template. The first question is internet users. And then you have three options. Cannot connect to that container, can connect to the container from any device, can only connect to the container from devices that run Windows. So remember, the IP was defined as a public IP. That means internet users can connect to this container from any device. Now, the second statement is if internet information services in container fail. Your options are the container will restart automatically, the container will only restart manually, the container must be redeployed. And the correct answer would be the container will restart automatically, because the failure condition was defined as restart. So that's the reason why I was telling you to focus on the conditions that are mentioned there. Whenever you will get questions related to ARM templates and then you will have some statements, most likely the answers would be in the conditions rather than the things that were defined at the top. What are the properties of the container? The question will most likely be around the conditions which are at the bottom of the ARM template. Question number 89 of the series. You have an Azure subscription. You plan to deploy the Azure container instances shown in the following table. There are 4 instances with the name of instance 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then the operating system of the instances is mentioned. Instance 1 uses Nano Server installation of Windows Server 2019. Instance 2 uses Server Core installation of Windows Server 2019. And instance 3 and 4 are Linux based. Which instance can you deploy to a container group? So basically, here the question is, you have different container instances and you want to make use of container groups. Which all instances can be hosted in a container group? Your options are instance 1 only, instance 2 only, instance 1 and instance 2 only, instance 3 and instance 4 only. Multi-container groups currently support only Linux containers. For Windows containers, Azure container instances only support deployment of a single container instance. So based on this statement, correct answer would be option D, because in the table you can see instance 3 and instance 4 are only based off Linux. You will only be able to deploy instance 3 and instance 4 in a container group in this case. Next question. You have 2 Azure virtual networks named VNet 1 and VNet 2. VNet 1 contains an Azure virtual machine named VM1. VNet 2 contains an Azure virtual machine named VM2. VM1 hosts a front-end application that connects to VM2 to receive data. Users report that the front-end application is slower than usual. You need to view the average round trip time RTT of the packets from VM1 to VM2. Which Azure Network Watcher feature should you use? Your options are connection troubleshoot, connection monitor, NSG flow logs, IP flow verify. To view the average round trip time RTT of packets from VM1 to VM2 in Azure, you should use the connection monitor feature of Azure Network Watcher. Connection monitor allows you to monitor the connectivity between two virtual machines and provides information about latency, packet loss, and other network matrices, which will help you diagnose network performance issues like the reported slow front-end application.
Thanks for staying till the end, folks. If you haven't watched previous parts of the series yet, then link to the playlist is available in the description section of this video. Make sure to check out other parts as well. I'll see you in the next part of the series.